Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestle News 365. Hope everyone is doing very, very well. As always, we have a ton of WWE news to get into today. So let's get straight into today's stories and let's kick off with Jinder Mahal. Now, we've spoken quite a lot over the course of the last few days talking about Jeff Hardy. Now, Jeff Hardy and the discussion around him, his future, his contract, is he being buried by WWE, his mistreatment, if you will, by the company, talent rotation, all that kind of stuff comes from two back-to-back defeats against Jinder Mahal. First on Main Event, then this week on Monday Night Raw. Now, this was my kind of reaction to it at the time, is that I felt that it was maybe something to do with WWE looking at Jeff Hardy as a way to get Jinder Mahal over and having no plans for Jeff Hardy. WWE doesn't have any plans for Jeff Hardy right now, but they do have plans for Jinder Mahal. And that's been backed up with recent news that we're hearing now, some recent reports, and it says that Jinder Mahal is set to receive a big push on Monday Night Raw, and he's going to be set to feud with a big-time superstar on the Red brand and a former teammate of his. Now, of course, Jinder Mahal is back on WWE television with new henchmen in Shanky and Via. The former United States champion and WWE champion picked up a comfortable victory over Jeff Hardy on the latest edition of Monday Night Raw this week on the USA Network. Now, the modern-day Maharaja standing on the Red brand is by all accounts set to get a lot bigger and a lot better, because WrestlingNews.co is reporting that WWE has lined up a big push for Jinder Mahal going forward on Raw. The plan is to build him up for a feud with former WWE champion and former 3MB teammate Jinder Mahal, Drew McIntyre, in the summer. This is what the report said, quote, "We're told that Jinder Mahal is slated to get a big push, and the idea is to build him up for his eventual feud with Drew McIntyre in the summer months." Now, Mahal is ready to embark on a potentially high-profile WWE run, and WWE has seemingly backed him for this with two fresh faces. Via, formerly known as Rinku, is no stranger to WWE television, as he was part of Indus Sher, along with Sourav Gurjar in NXT. Now, WWE signed Shanky in January of 2020. Following a series of tryouts, and then the 7-foot giant even competed at the Superstar Spectacle event earlier this year. So the decision to have a feud between the former 3MB teammates is a no-brainer, as Mahal and McIntyre have shared similar paths in their respective careers. The former WWE champions have also teased the potential on-screen storylines on at least a few occasions in the past. So this is nothing really super surprising, is it really? And I think, to be honest, everyone's kind of wanted a Jinder Mahal-Drew McIntyre feud for a while now, because, as I just mentioned, their careers are very much similar parallels, really, when you look at it. And I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest if this was a plan to do last year on WWE television for the WWE Championship. Jinder Mahal returned to Monday Night Raw just after WrestleMania last year. He returned, he looked in great shape. He had been off, I think, since certainly the summer months, or it might have been the 4 months of 2019. He had been off for a while with a knee injury, came back, looked great, did maybe 1-2 matches on Monday Night Raw from the Performance Center, and then he disappeared again. The problem was that same injury that he had in 2019 had flared up and it hadn't fully recovered. He had to go back, have surgery once again, and he was off of television for another year. I think, and I think a lot of people think, and I think even Drew McIntyre's teased this himself, that there were plans to do a Drew McIntyre Jinder Mahal feud on television for the WWE Championship, because there's just so much history there, and it looks like that now Mahal's back and he's seemingly healthy. They're going to do the feud again. It's just not going to be for the WWE Championship this time. So obviously their history is there. They were both part of the 3MB stable, along with Heath Slater, the three-man band. And you have to remember where they've come from. You have to remember where they come from. That stable was a comedy stable. It was a joke. It was a jobber stable. They did jobs to everyone. It was a comedic gimmick, and it was a gimmick for three people that everyone knew didn't have a shelf life in WWE. They were going to be gone in a couple of years, and they were gone. Apart from Heath Slater, they were gone in a couple of years. Drew McIntyre was released. Jinder Mahal was released. And eventually, Jinder Mahal first made his way back to WWE, got himself in great shape, became WWE champion. Say what you will about the Jinder Mahal character and the Jinder Mahal WWE Championship reign on SmackDown in 2017. Was it a good thing? Was it a bad thing? Did they just do it to try and shock people? Was Jinder Mahal ready? All that kind of stuff. I think you look back on it, I think Jinder Mahal got heat, which is what he should have done as a heel. Was he necessarily ready for that spot? Maybe not. in retrospect, maybe he wasn't. You do have to remember, though, at the time, 2017 SmackDown, for how great 2016 SmackDown Live was, 2017 SmackDown was just really poor writing. It was really poor writing, and obviously you had the Punjabi prison match with Jinder Mahal and Randy Orton, which was just a disaster, and having the great Khali come out and all that kind of stuff. But the story that people want here is the Mahal versus McIntyre story, because in the same vein that Mahal returned, won the WWE Championship, and is in the best shape of his life, Drew McIntyre did the same. He was released, fired by WWE. Drew McIntyre, not in the same vein as Jinder Mahal, actually busted his hump on the independent scene, went to Impact, went to, obviously, ICW, back home in Scotland, over here in the UK, did all of this great stuff, made his way back to NXT, became NXT champion, made his way back to the main roster, obviously is in phenomenal shape, the shape of his life as well, becomes WWE champion, and now he's the top babyface on Monday Night Raw. That's just how it is. So given their history together as stablemates, given the fact that their journeys out of WWE and back into WWE and all of the success that came with it, and also the fact that these guys in real life, they are best of friends. Drew McIntyre said this in his interviews. He says, I speak to Jinder Mahal nearly every day. I train with him all the time in the gym in Florida. We keep in touch all the time. So there's a sense of realism. There's a sense of parallel stories. There's just, it's such a rich story for WWE to tell. You would think that surely WWE can't screw this one up, right? So we'll wait and see about that. But it is a fantastic story, and it's something that I think people wanted to see last year. Obviously, we couldn't because of the Jinder Mahal injury, but we can see it this year. And I think it's smart timing for WWE, I do, in the sense that Drew McIntyre needs something to do. He doesn't feel as hot as he did last year, and I don't think he's going to win Sunday at WrestleMania Backlash. I think Bobby Lashley retains. So McIntyre shouldn't be in the WWE Championship chase after that. He shouldn't. He's got back-to-back defeats, even though I don't think he's going to take the pinfall or submission on Sunday. He'll have back-to-back defeats, and he shouldn't be in the championship picture. He's still a top babyface on that brand. He carried Raw for pretty much a year through the pandemic, and he's still a big star. So he needs something to do. That thing to do is a feud with Jinder Mahal. So I think that this is smart timing. I think he loses the match on Sunday. I don't think he takes the pinfall or submission, but I think he then transitions into a Jinder Mahal feud. Who's to say Mahal doesn't cost Drew McIntyre the match on Sunday anyway, and that kickstart their feud heading into the summer, heading into SummerSlam or something like that. So I think that this is a feud that people want to see. And I'm excited to see it. And I think it'll be a great watch. I do. Now, sticking with Raw, and sticking of Drew McIntyre, I suppose, because when you talk about Drew McIntyre, you can talk about Brock Lesnar. And there's been a latest update when it comes to Brock Lesnar, his status with WWE. Possibly, is he going to sign with AEW, all that kind of stuff. Well, given the fact that we're getting to the point where fans are going to be returning to WWE television on a regular basis soon, obviously, people are talking about SummerSlam maybe being in a stadium or being in an arena with fans in attendance. That's going to be the kickstart of fans returning on a full-time basis and WWE going back to touring on a full-time basis. Lots of people are saying, well, does that mean that Brock Lesnar's coming back? Because people have said for a while now, of course, Brock Lesnar's contract expired with WWE in 2020 after WrestleMania last year, and the general consensus was that while he is a free agent, he will re-sign with WWE at some point. He will return to the fold at some point, that point being most likely when we have regular fans in attendance, so it can justify Brock Lesnar's hefty fee that comes with his contract. Well, Brock Lesnar doesn't seem to be returning from his WWE hiatus anytime soon. Now, as I mentioned, Brock Lesnar is currently a free agent, and there are several unanswered questions about the former WWE World Heavyweight Champion's whereabouts and his future with the company. Now, Dave Meltzer provided an update as to Brock Lesnar's status with the company on a recent edition of the Wrestling Observer radio show. Meltzer has not heard about any SummerSlam plans for Lesnar. Not that that means anything. WWE creates plans for any superstar, regardless how big or small you are, only a couple of weeks out from the event, so things can change. But the former Universal Champion is still not re-signed with WWE, but Meltzer does expect the superstar to be back in time for next year's WrestleMania event from AT&T Stadium in Texas. Now, Meltzer initially ruled out the possibility of Lesnar going to AEW, while Tony Khan can still coax Lesnar to jump ship to All Elite Wrestling. Meltzer has not picked up on any backstage whispers that hint towards the same. This is what Meltzer had to say, quote, "I have not heard. I would like to think he would come back for a WrestleMania, but he's not under contract. But I have not heard he's going to AEW. I mean, he's just not. But I suppose it's possible, but I have not heard any whispers in that direction," said Meltzer. Now, when it comes to that, and again, I always say this when it comes to Meltzer quotes, because to me, that is a Meltzer opinion as opposed to a Meltzer news story or a Meltzer scoop, exclusive news, all that kind of stuff. That's what we have to be really careful with when it comes to Dave Meltzer, in the sense that there is a massive difference between him reporting on something that he's heard, or him trying to, like any other fan, trying to see the lay of the land and try and put pieces together and try and understand what's going to happen in the future. Basically, he's saying there that he thinks he'll come back for WrestleMania. I think he'll come back for WrestleMania. You might think he's going to come back for WrestleMania. Your opinion is just as valid as Dave Meltzer's is. That's how it works. He hasn't heard anything. Now, when it comes to Brock Lesnar going to AEW, I, like many people, don't see it. I think Brock Lesnar, people can call him a mercenary, people can call him only chasing the money and all that kind of stuff, but I do think Lesnar does have this intangible loyalty to Vince McMahon. Maybe not to WWE, but for Vince McMahon. They kind of, as much as they can bicker and argue back and forth, I get the impression that Lesnar and Vince have this understanding, and Lesnar is loyal to Vince McMahon. And I don't know necessarily if he would work for someone that wasn't Vince McMahon. So I just don't see him going to AEW. And personally as well, I don't see someone like Tony Khan putting up with the Lesnar schedule. Lesnar's got the schedule that he likes whenever he's with WWE. It's a select amount of dates per year. I think AEW would want more from him for that kind of price tag. So I just don't know if I see that. And again, you do have to say, though, if Meltzer had heard anything about Lesnar go to AEW, he wouldn't break the story, because he would be told by people in AEW, don't break this story. In the same vein that I'm sure they might have heard about maybe Sting going to AEW or something like that back in December, but they didn't say anything. So why would they say anything here? You do have to look at that status as well. So Lesnar, as far as having a match at SummerSlam, look, things can happen very quickly. We are in May, SummerSlam's in August. Stuff can happen over the course of the next couple of months, and maybe they have discussions once they really nail down the location. We don't even have the location of SummerSlam right now. If it is revealed that SummerSlam is going to be in Madison Square Garden, or it's going to be in a big stadium somewhere in Vegas or wherever, maybe in Texas, then maybe they pick up the phone and say, right, let's work out a deal between WWE and Brock Lesnar, because we have the location, we have fans in attendance. It's the kickstart to touring. We want to kickstart it with a bang. How do you do that? You get Brock Lesnar back on board. So I don't necessarily think, to be honest, that the reason we haven't heard anything about Lesnar and SummerSlam is because WWE, frankly, have other priorities when it comes to SummerSlam right now, such as where is SummerSlam going to be. It's difficult to book Brock for the show when you don't know where the show is going to be booked. You can't sprint before you can walk in this kind of situation. So that's the latest when it comes to Lesnar. The latest is that there isn't much news at the moment. I do want to talk about the NXT ratings, because this is really a point of contention for a lot of people on social media yesterday, because NXT has drawn its lowest viewership since moving to Tuesday nights last month. Now, Tuesday's live edition of NXT on the USA Network drew 697,000 live viewers on the USA Network. This is according to Nielsen via Showbuzz Daily. Now, it should be noted that this was the 5th NXT episode to air in the Tuesday night time slots, with no head-to-head competition from AEW Dynamite. Now, it did have competition, I think, from the NBA. I think that's important to state as well. The show featured the NXT champion Karrion Kross defeating Austin Theory in a non-title opening match that was promoted on Raw the night prior. So much for that lead-in the day before that Triple H was talking about. That lead-in wasn't that profitable for NXT, was it? It also saw NXT Women's Champion Raquel Gonzalez making her first successful title defense over Mercedes Martinez, plus NXT Cruiserweight Champion Kushida retaining the title over Santos Escobar in a 2 out of 3 falls main event. Now, the viewership was down 8.4% from last week's show, which drew 761,000 live viewers on the USA Network. NXT ranked number 25 in the cable top 150 this week with a 0.17 rating in the 18 to 49 key demographic. I will repeat that, a 0.17 rating. The ranking is down, while the rating is also down 5.6% from last week's 4th Tuesday show, which ranked 21st with a 0.18 rating in the key demographic. NXT ranked 64 in viewership this week, which is down from last week's 60th viewership. This week's NXT viewership was down 8.4% from last week's show, while the key 18 to 49 demographic is down 5.6% from last week. This is the worst audience that NXT has drawn since its move to Tuesday nights. The key demo rating was the lowest for NXT since March 24, which includes 2 episodes that went head-to-head with AEW Dynamite. This week's NXT viewership was up 15.4% from the same week in 2020, while the key demographic was up 13.3% from the same week in 2020. It should be noted that last year's show went head-to-head with Dynamite too. So, look, they did have competition from the NBA, but I think a lot of people within WWE and with NXT, and probably on social media as well, thought, especially when you had those first couple of episodes on Tuesday that did good numbers. We're talking, was it 800,000 or at least high 700s? There was a thought that without the competition of AEW, the people that would maybe be on the fence about watching either NXT or AEW on Wednesday nights would then say, well, I don't have anything else to watch. I'll watch NXT on a Tuesday. I'll enjoy it. They'll have more viewers. The concern for me, if I was a WWE official or as an NXT official, or even if I was on the USA Network and I was in those conversations, my concern would be that obviously that audience that no longer is forced to choose between AEW and NXT on a Wednesday night has sampled NXT on the Tuesday nights because we saw those higher viewerships in the first couple of weeks on Tuesdays. They sampled NXT, and obviously either they haven't liked it or two, they've decided that it's not must-see television and they don't need to watch. That would be a concern. It's the same principle as opening a restaurant, having loads of people in your restaurant that first day, and it's sold out, and you can't fit people all in there, and it's sold out. You go, oh, it's amazing, and then the next week nobody comes back. That indicates that they tried the food, they didn't like it, they're not going to come back again. That's an indication. That's an indication of where NXT is right now. And I think, and I made this point on social media as well, and I think it's fairly accurate. I mean, if not, you can let me know in the comment section below, that the Wednesday night wars between NXT and AEW did so much damage to the NXT brand, and it has nothing to do with AEW. It has nothing to do with AEW. So I don't mean this as an AEW, they kicked their ass and they're never going to come back and they sent them packing. No. The biggest problem with NXT moving to the USA Network on those Wednesdays for that 2-hour show is they completely lost their identity. Whatever magic was there about NXT and just the simplistic way of their storytelling, the 1-hour show, the pacing of their show, even the arcs of the characters that came in and went out. You knew, for instance, Shinsuke Nakamura. You knew he was going to come into the territory. He was going to be there for a year, and then he was going to go to Raw or SmackDown. He was going to go to the main roster, and that's it. And everything really kind of changed about NXT when they moved to the USA Network. It was a 2-hour show, so the pacing changed. Their week-to-week storytelling really changed. Prior to that, it didn't necessarily matter too much if you watched NXT on the WWE Network. It really didn't matter that much. In reality, you could just watch it from takeover to takeover, and the NXT shows were largely irrelevant. They had to change that. They had to speed up the pace of their storytelling, which I think hurts their brand. And the magic was gone, and it felt like WWE Light. It felt like a version of Raw or SmackDown, but a watered-down version. And it felt like NXT trying to be something that they weren't. They built up this brand of being an underground kind of show with maybe indie wrestlers, but also wrestlers you didn't know that well, but they weren't going to be in the territory for that long, so you had to catch it while you could because then they were going to go mainstream. It was about finding these people before they went mainstream, before they went to Raw or SmackDown. And now you've got people, and I don't mean this to disparage them by any stretch of the imagination, but you've got guys like Ciampa, Gargano, Adam Cole, and all of those other names that have been with NXT a while, and it seems like they don't know how to evolve the characters for a long period of time because they're so used to only having them for a short period that they're not sure how to stretch it out, and they're not sure what to do in their terms of their week-to-week storytelling and all that kind of stuff. It just feels like the magic that NXT once had has kind of been lost, and I don't know what their identity is anymore. Certainly whatever their identity is now is people aren't latching onto it like they used to. And it does feel like that show that it doesn't feel like must-see television. And I think they are struggling with the fact that, and again, I don't mean this as a knock to them, they don't have a ton of stars on that show. They've got fantastic talent on that show. Whether it's Karrion Kross, whether it's Finn Balor, whether it's Adam Cole, whether it's whoever, I think they need at least a couple more established stars on that show. They need the stars on that show to bring people through the door, and then they can stay for the talent that they don't know. And I think that's the important thing. That's why I used to always say with NXT and AEW, AEW should have always beaten NXT because they've got bigger stars. When you've got a show that's got Chris Jericho, Jon Moxley, Cody Rhodes, Kenny Omega, the list can go on and on. Sting, all of these stars, if they were signed to WWE, they wouldn't be on NXT. They would be on Raw or SmackDown because they're draws, they're names. They bring eyeballs to the product. NXT doesn't have that. Yes, you can move Finn Balor back to NXT, and it helps a bit, but frankly, I think what NXT truly does need is they need some bigger stars on that show. They can build their own stars, they can create their own stars, but they need someone there, or they need a couple of people there that bring eyeballs to the product, and then you stay for the talent that they have. And I don't think that NXT has that. And I think they have lost their identity. And whilst I do think they're kind of getting it back without the added pressure of going head-to-head with Dynamite on a Wednesday, and they can kind of do what they want in terms of their own storytelling, I just don't know what NXT kind of is anymore. And I think the audience reflects that, and I think the storytelling, I think the product reflects that as well. So it's certainly a fascinating time, and we'll have to see what happens with the ratings in the future. Now, speaking of upcoming tapings, it looks like more fans are going to be at these NXT tapings in the future. It looks like more fans will be allowed at the NXT TV tapings from the Capitol Wrestling Center at the Performance Center in Orlando, Florida. WWE has allowed a limited crowd at NXT TV tapings for a few months now, but a new email was issued to fans this week offering, quote, special opportunity at NXT tapings beginning for the May 18 NXT episode. Now, the email does note that COVID-19 testing is now being held on site for the nights of the event, free of charge. All fans will have to complete their own coronavirus testing on site, regardless of their vaccination status. It was also noted that there is no longer the requirement to receive a COVID-19 test on the day before the taping. The email from NXT encouraged recipients to forward the opportunity to friends and family members. Multiple NXT regulars have said this is the first time they've received an email like this. It's not been confirmed that NXT is bringing more fans into the venue each week, but they are offering the chance to attend tapings to more fans. The email notes that fans must be over the age of 16 unless accompanied by a guardian, and must provide photo ID when checking in. The rapid antigen, COVID-19 test and temperature checks are also done at the time of check-in. Face coverings will remain mandatory while the taping is going on. So we could be seeing more NXT fans in attendance in the future. Now, does that really link to the previous story when we were talking about the ratings and the viewership? Certainly having more fans there and having more fans in attendance and having a more rowdy atmosphere would help the product. Does it help the ratings? I don't know. I don't think so, to be honest. I think it's too simplistic to look at it that way. But in fairness, I suppose, I talked about the identity of NXT that they once had, and the fact that it feels like they've kind of lost that identity. In fairness, a big part of NXT's identity previously was the crowd. The crowd, it was at Full Sail, wasn't it? But the crowd that was there was a big part of NXT's magic and was a good part of NXT's appeal, certainly the appeal that they've lost. So maybe more fans might help out. I don't think it's a full solution, though. Finally, obviously there was concern over Humberto Korea this week on Monday Night Raw. Humberto Korea faced Sheamus in a singles match. Around 10 minutes into the match, Korea went for a sunset flip powerbomb to the outside, but didn't execute it as planned. When Humberto flipped over Sheamus, he slipped and couldn't land on his feet, which caused the Celtic Warrior and United States Champion to drop directly onto Korea's left leg. Sheamus' weight landed directly on Korea's hip, and the match had to be stopped. Since then, there have been reports that Korea was okay backstage, and Korea has taken to Twitter to address the situation. This is what he had to say, quotes, "Last night was the first time I couldn't finish a match in my whole wrestling career. But when you push the limits, as I do, anything can happen in a split second. This is not over, Sheamus. Until next time." Now, Sheamus responded by saying, "Next time, my arm was lifted, so it's game over, kid." So it looks like the reports were saying that Korea looks to be okay, and they're continuing the storyline with Sheamus. Did they add the match to WrestleMania Backlash on Sunday? Maybe that's too soon. It certainly was scary. I mean, look at the way he's laid out there. And we had a similar situation. Obviously, Orange Cassidy got knocked out last night on Dynamite, and we are going to be doing an AEW news video later, so be sure to check that out on the channel. It's always concerning. Now, fortunately, it looks like he's okay. And as I mentioned previously when we spoke about this, the unfortunate timing of this, if you're finally getting used on television once again and you get injured, it would just be a nightmare. So thankfully, he looks to be okay, and he's going to continue his storyline with Sheamus. I don't have a problem with it. People forget how young Humberto Korea is. If they can find the momentum, if something can click, this guy can be a big star for WWE. So thankfully, the injury doesn't look that serious. But of course, guys, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on the WWE news stories we've spoken about today? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about WWE, AEW, Impact Wrestling, New Japan Pro Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community, drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube, go up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestling News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now. Or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or have you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.